Hello and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke every single week through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I'm Daniel and your co-host this week because it was a strong Warner Brothers Discovery news week, and of course it just aligned perfectly as it normally does when Matt is on. Welcome back, Matt.
Hello. I am here to change the hierarchy of the Warner Brothers news cycle.
Matt Stradamus returns. If this is your very first episode of the show, the way we format it is we go through this week's news, and then we end it with the Brokehead Block, which is the more personal side of the show, what Matt and I have been up to since we've last been on, what we've been watching, playing, what's been making us broke. So let's jump right in and explore sector number 532. Someone else is looking to save money here, that one being Comcast, as after a month of numerous layoffs and departures, the attempt to reboot the 2000s gaming channel G4 TV is officially done, with Comcast shutting the network down. An email was sent to remaining staff by David Scott, who is the CEO of Spectator, which is the parent company, a division of Comcast. And in the memo, Scott explained, quote, "The company's investment and efforts to revive the network just didn't gain traction. Viewership is low and the network has not achieved sustainable financial results," end quote. G4 first launched back in 2002, lasting through to 2014. Is G4 something that you kept up with, Matt, or did you revisit the relaunched G4 network?
I loved the old G4, especially particularly Attack of the Show. I thought it was fun and doofy, although I'm sure there are definitely segments of it that did not age well, but I like how it, kind of changed and updated with the times, and it was fun. The Attack of the Show touched on my kind of geeky buttons, but I would watch some of the game shows or gamer shows just talking about what was new, and it was fun. I was sad to see it go, but when it went, I had already kind of checked out on it just because life took me in other directions. But I was sad to see it go. When they announced it was coming back, though, so much has changed since G4 went away that it's kind of like when you make a sequel to a movie and too much time has passed, like 30 years has passed. Okay, maybe they should just let sleeping dogs lie. And I felt like it wasn't gonna last very long, and I just completely mentally checked out on it even being back until they announced that it was going away again. And I completely forgot it had been back.
You're like, that was still on?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a big fan of the original network as well. I watched Cinema Tech. I've been rewatching old episodes of that because they're up on YouTube. Huge compilations, 5-hour long compilations of those old episodes, which were basically just trailers of games and gameplay. And for some reason that was fun, and it still is fun to see, especially now that they're much older titles. And it's like, oh yeah, I never played that, or you kind of see the progression of some of these PC games, which is really fascinating. And then yeah, go ahead.
The whole media landscape, though, is completely changed since they went off the air.
Yes, and I think they did do an attempt at trying to make everything a little bit more modern, because they didn't have classic shows like Attack or Cinema Tech. They did do Attack of the Show, but it obviously had a very different format. It didn't have the same hosts. The X-Play channel, I actually do like, and I still subscribe to it, but even that is it's a more modern X-Play, where it's someone in front of a camera and kind of like a Let's Player, and they're in the front of the camera talking gameplay, and there's trailer or footage in front of it. It's not like a show format anymore like it used to be, or like game trailers used to have something like that. So for better or worse, I mean, they did adapt to the times, but obviously people are attributing several things to the non-success of this. One of the things, though, is that there are so many networks and channels and podcasts and everything that people are kind of already cemented into their favorite YouTubers or their favorite gaming shows. And I know one of the other controversial things that they were saying too is a couple of the hosts, like Adam Sessler, and I do still subscribe to X-Plane. I don't know if that's continuing anymore, but he made some comments that were very political and things that definitely rubbed people the wrong way, at least from that part of the political spectrum, to where they were like, okay, well, I'm not watching X Play anymore. One of the other hosts, I believe on Attack on the Show, made some comments as well that were also seen as not political, but more. She went heavy on sexism in the industry, and
Oh,
apparently
Olivia Munn.
it wasn't Olivia Munn because she didn't come back to G4. It's Frosk is the new host that was on there, and after that happened, that took off with all the right wing channels and more boycotts to G4 and asking for them to get fired, and it just kind of snowballed. But from what I understand, at that point, it was already kind of a decline in viewership, and subscribers weren't really climbing like they should. They were apparently spending a ton of money. They had a ton of staff members, and I guess they were hoping that this was an initial investment, bring in these big YouTubers and put them all into one network. The idea is sound, but again, I just think it was a little too late in today's times.
Like I said, how people consume media like that is, they'll go online. They're not looking to go on TV. They'll go to TikTok. They'll go to YouTube. For quick stuff, they'll go to Twitch. I mean, there's no one's tuning into that network like a network show. And I think like they tried adapting, like before they went off the air the first time, they tried adapting to that. But then like once the network shuttered and everyone went their separate ways, I think like the core people just like times moved beyond them. And they just couldn't bring it together. Like that, everything has changed since then.
Unfortunately, I do think that will be the last we hear of G4. But again, if you liked any of those hosts, most of them do have their very own YouTube channels already, so you can they'll be going right back to that. And I think the Gaming Historian might be one of them, and you can Game Completionist. That's who it is. He's been huge since before G4, so they'll be okay for the most part. But it is kind of a shame for those that were hoping G4 was the future. And since it is the perfect time of the year, Halloween, we did get a Halloween movie, which is supposed to be the final one, the one that ends the Michael Myers current continuity. I think there's 5 timelines, but this is the most recent one. Halloween Ends came up short of expectations in its opening weekend at the box office. So this third installment of the rebooted Halloween trilogy, it earned $40.1 million in its first weekend, which was almost $15 million shy of its $55 million projections. Some are pointing to Peacock's day one streaming debut of the film as a reason why it was a little bit lower than what they expected. In spite of the opening, though, and in spite of its negative Rotten Tomato rating, the film has surpassed its $30 million production budget. So now it's a matter of trying to take a bite out of the marketing and hoping that as they lead into Halloween, it kind of ramps up a little bit more on ticket sales.
I haven't seen this one, but I seem to check in on like the Halloween series like every 20 years or so. Like I watched Age 20 when that came out, and I liked that. And then when they started this new trilogy, I'm like, didn't we already do this with bringing Jamie Lee Curtis back? And I never saw what followed up Age 20, but this one, like I liked the first of this new trilogy. It was a good time, but Michael Myers is never dead. Somehow he keeps coming back, and I'm sure there'll be another Halloween, Michael Myers based or focused movie. Again, like everyone I know though that are hardcore Halloween fans, I think maybe one of them liked this movie. A lot of people were just like very offended by this movie.
I can definitely say I've seen it. I just saw it yesterday, and I can see how it would be polarizing to a lot of fans, and even to me. I'll keep this all spoiler free, but it was my least favorite of this new trilogy. Didn't mean I disliked it, but there were definitely some problems in there from even a narrative standpoint from where we were with Jamie Lee Curtis in the previous film, and there were some character changes from this one that it's like, okay, that doesn't really connect to the character you set up in the last 2 movies. But it's all I don't know if it's nitpicky, but there are problems with the film, that's for sure. And maybe we'll have a full review at some point in the next couple of weeks, especially as it ends up showing up on Vudu or on streaming services like Peacock. It's already up on there, so you can catch it. But I do agree. There will be another Halloween. I don't know if it'll be in this continuity. I think they'll end up rebooting after this, and hopefully it's a better reboot than the Rob Zombie one. But this reboot did pretty well, so we'll see how it all goes over the next couple of years if they decide to revive this franchise again. And hopefully they do, because I'm a fan of the Halloween franchise. And speaking of the top 5 costumes for this year, I think we did it last year, so we're doing it this year too. Number 1, actually, let's start with number 5. Number 5 was a fairy. Nothing specific, no certain IPs, but fairy, although maybe it's one of those Party City costumes where it's clearly Tinkerbell, but they just say Fairy Bell or something like that.
Yeah.
Number 4 is Stranger's Things. Number 3 is a dinosaur, obviously with Jurassic World and everything. Dinos are back. Leo is a huge dino kid, and he's wearing last year's dinosaur costume for this year.
Nice.
Number 2, Spider-Man.
Perennial.
And number 1 is a witch. Just the generic witch costume.
Okay. But which Spider-Man?
That's a good question. I would assume that it's the standard red and blue, but that could be half of all the multiverse Spider-Man, right?
Well, that's where the witch comes in.
Gotcha.
But my wife and I we just threw something together very quickly because, I mean, we're not really going out for Halloween this year. We're kind of sticking home. We're already tired of Halloween, going out and doing stuff because we do HHN in September, and like it already feels like it's November for us. But we're going to one of the development sessions this week at Hard Rock, and I made little Sims plumb bobs to wear on our heads.
Oh, okay. So for you, it already feels like Halloween's come and gone, but I'm glad that you are still dressing up for it and in many ways celebrating it, obviously with Halloween Horror Nights being a big local thing here in Florida, that it is something that you can still celebrate. And I'm looking forward to taking Leo out trick-or-treating, and hopefully when he gets older, maybe we can start doing things like taking him to the parks or taking him to Halloween Horror Nights, assuming he still wants to hang out with mom and dad at that point.
Yeah. Well, I mean, SeaWorld's got, during the daytime, they've got trick-or-treat trail for kids and stuff like that. So they appeal to both, and by doing that in the morning and their new Hollow Scream at night.
And then also Magic Kingdom, I think, does that Mickey's Not So Scary, which Kelly and I have done in the past. And it's a fun time simply for the fact that the park is a lot more empty than it normally is. So it's like, all right, for the most part, we can get on every ride without waiting too long. But it's only for 4 or 5 hours, which is the only issue with it. But it's a lot of fun, maybe one year. This came out of the Lost Archives, audio that I never thought anyone would hear. We always knew that Tim Curry was the voice of the Joker at one point in Batman the Animated Series, but all of that dialogue now has been found and has been uploaded to YouTube in a recent documentary.
Just for that, Batman. Service with a smile. Batman! You wouldn't let me fry, would you?
And Curry did explain in an interview with Screen Geek, quote, "I did play Joker for a while, but I had bronchitis and they fired me and hired Mark Hamill. That's life," end quote. So it sounds like there's not too much about going on with it, but did you get a chance to hear Tim Curry's original Joker?
Yeah, I've heard some of it before, and I mean, it's not bad. He does a great Joker, but I couldn't see him if he had never been fired. I couldn't see Tim Curry still coming back to do the Joker after 30 years. Whereas Hamill's, every time he says he's retired, it's well, the right project comes along and he'll do it again. I wouldn't have been upset with Tim Curry as Joker. Did it great, but things happen for a reason, and just Douglas Scott got injured making Mission Impossible, leading to Hugh Jackman. Well, Tim Curry got bronchitis and led to Mark Hamill, so it worked out fine.
It definitely did. I'm very happy Mark Hamill is our Joker. A lot of people hold that standard of Joker right there as one of the best of all time. I know he's my favorite Joker. Anytime I read the comics, I hear Mark Hamill's voice, and like you said, he will come back for video games, and he's retired as many times as Hayao Miyazaki is retired from filming, or Ben Affleck is
retired as many times as Joker has died.
Yeah. That's right. And thankfully he's come back each and every time. I think the Killing Joke was the time where he's like, this is really the last time. And then we've heard him in the Justice League Action cartoon, which isn't even a massive project. I think it's a matter of they just paid him enough. And he's like, all right, let's go ahead and keep doing this. That's going to be a role that I think he will continue to do up until his inevitable. I don't think he's ever going to retire, honestly. I think that's going to be one of the last things he does in his career, and he'll be remembered for that and Luke Skywalker, and it's kind of hard to tell which one is going to be the headline.
Right.
So we do have some DCEU news, as this has been all over Twitter, and I don't even know what to call it. They're trying to call it the Snyderverse, almost like, here, look, we restored it. It's back, but it doesn't have Zack Snyder. So that's kind of the news out, that it's kind of a weird thing that we're in a weird phase right now. And I don't know where we'll be in 6 months, but right now I'm very unhappy. According to Dwayne Johnson, he went behind Walter Hamada's back to get Henry Cavill's cameo in Black Adam. And I don't care if this is a spoiler, because this has been the worst kept secret as far as the DCEU goes. Hamada did not want the cameo to happen, as he wanted to move on from the previous Zack Snyder-led era of the DCEU. When he said no, Johnson supposedly took things into his own hands and went above Hamada, asking Warner Brothers Picture studio heads Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdi to make the cameo happen. They agreed and got a deal done around Labor Day, shooting the scene last month. And this is something that was quoted here by The Rock, who said on an interview with Estos Combo, quote, "The fans will always guide you where you need to go. That's the new era I talk about in the DC universe. And in the DC universe, they haven't always listened to fans in the past, but things are different. In Black Adam, things are different. So that's why we can introduce the JSA. That's why in Black Adam, Superman, Batman, Aquaman, Wonder Woman, Flash, they all coexist in our world." End quote. That pretty much tracks with the old regime, I think, of them wanting to replace the old Superman with Supergirl, Batman with Michael Keaton, and Batgirl. I will say that it does sound like The Rock is at least telling some truths here.
The Rock is always, I mean, it's part of his showmanship of, going back to his WWE days. Like, I do believe he listens to the fans, and, he, just like Will Smith did back in the day when he had blockbuster after blockbuster. He's like, look at what type of movies make money, and like these are the things that they want. So like I listen, like I go after like what's making the money. I got to give a lot of credit to The Rock for he's been flying the flag of Black Adam for almost a decade, almost as long as the Zack Snyder has been put his footprint on the DCEU. And I was kind of shocked that he stuck with it, and that for 6 years straight, like, okay, when's it going to start shooting? When's it going to start shooting? And it finally started shooting. That said, also follow your gut when you see when they show you what they're making. And I wanted to like this. Like I haven't seen it yet, and the fact that I haven't seen it yet means that I wasn't seeing what I needed to like immediately go out and watch it. And no detriment to The Rock, but like, how many times you got to hear that this movie is going to change the hierarchy of power in DC? Like, I'm tired. Just show me, don't tell me. And everything that they were showing me looked like scenes that that we'd already seen in Marvel movies. And it's one of those things where like I want to like this, but I don't like what I've seen enough to go see in the theater. Like, I'll honestly wait for streaming for this one. But I'm glad The Rock fought and went behind Hamada's back to get Henry Cavill back. What kind of follow-up we'll get, I don't know. I mean, we know Zack's deep in Rebel Moon stuff, and that could be another 2-3 years before he's done with any of that stuff, if he even wants to come back. But the key takeaway though is that everyone who was riding Zack's ass and pushing him out at Warner Brothers is gone now.
Right. Yeah, the one that needs to go still is Jeff Johns. He's still there, fucking doing the shows. He co-wrote Black Adam, and I think he has a writing credit on The Flash. I think I'd have to look that one up. He definitely did at some point. So his claws are still in there somewhere, and he's still running around in that studio, which is unfortunate. But we're in a better position now than we were 2 years ago, when a lot of those people were still there. I think even a year ago at this point. I will say on this, if this is true, great. But one of the things that he confirmed was that if they did not get Henry Cavill, that it would have been another headless Superman cameo, kind of like they had in Shazam. Just have a body double and then they put the head off and you don't see Superman, or a shattered out Superman like in Peacemaker.
Yeah.
Right. Which was a little confusing because at Comic-Con he was like, it's going to depend on which Superman we see. So that made me speculate, and I think I said it on the podcast, of that might be the Michael B. Jordan debut of that, because we know that they were making that Superman. So maybe he was alluding to that. I don't know. But at this point, it sounds like they would have just gone with the headless cameo instead. And I'm surprised they even would have done that scene at all. But I guess they wanted that scene in there at some point, and then maybe they were hoping that they could convince Henry Cavill at a later point.
I mean, Henry Cavill's been wanting to do it for a long time. He's every time there's been rumors of him being booted, like he's made some kind of comment that like he still very much wants to tell the story and continue playing Superman. But the former heads at WB were not having it, and they didn't want to pay him his contracted amount for just a little appearance. Like, well, then give me more to do. And they weren't doing it. So I'm glad that he's confirmed that he's still up for more, and that there are talks that there's going to be more now. Let's just get like Zach's involvement in it, and we've got it back.
Well, yeah, let's jump ahead a little bit to Henry Cavill, who did confirm on Instagram his return as Superman for future projects. He said, quote, "A very small taste of what's to come, my friends. The dawn of hope renewed. Thank you for your patience. It will be rewarded. #Superman." End quote.
Hey everyone. I wanted to wait until the weekend was over before posting this, because I wanted to give you all a chance to watch Black Adam. But now that plenty of you have, I wanted to make it official that I am back as Superman. And the image you see on this post and what you saw in Black Adam are just a very small taste of things to come. So there's a lot to be thankful for, and I'll get to that in time. But I want to thank you guys most of all. Thank you for your support, and thank you for your patience. I promise it will be rewarded.
So for whatever reasons, like it might be, like you were mentioning, a pay scale thing, but it sounds like there's going to be more appearances outside of just Black Adam. It sounds like he did get contracted in to at least one solo film, it sounds like. And one of the things that I don't like the wording of the dawn of hope, because that sounds like Justice League universe Superman. And he again put up a picture of the red and blue suit. He has the spit curl, which is not Snyderverse. The suit obviously confirms that this is not right after Zack Snyder's Justice League. Some have said, well, Black Adam can take place 30 years after Zack Snyder's Justice League, sometime in the future, even though Amanda Waller's apparently there. So it just doesn't fit in that universe. So to me, it still says that the canon to the studio and to Henry is Joss Whedon's Justice League, and that seems to be the timeline that they want to go in. But with that confirmation of him coming back, do you think that pretty much confirms the reshoot of The Flash, where they were going to kill off Superman, and this was all in Krypton, where Zod, because he's also back for the Flash film, or I'm sorry, yeah, for Flash, where they shoot the ship that little baby Clark Kent was in, doesn't make it to Earth, and instead Supergirl is the one who ends up on Earth, and that's how they end up. That was their plan, to replace Henry Cavill and have Supergirl there instead moving forward. With him coming back, do you think that scene is completely cut in The Flash?
Maybe it's multi-universal shenanigans. Flash breaks the timeline and ends up in a universe where that did happen. And it's like they're out because like there was the talks of Michael Keaton is going to be replacing Ben Affleck as like a mentor role, like a Nick Fury kind of role after like that movie was done. Ben Affleck's, Batman would be gone and Michael Keaton would be back. And so, either this newly merged universe or rebooted timeline, you can have both Superman, Supergirl, or just Supergirl. They can always reboot that and rejig that. And they delayed that movie another year. So, and Ezra Miller just did reshoot. So I honestly don't know what to think. I'm just, I'm glad that Cavill's back, and like the spit curl and blue and red, suit. He still, it's in the Snyder cut. He still gets back at some point into that red and blue suit before Darkseid seduces him or turns him with the life equation. Could have been like the day before, but like when he shows them in those scenes, like he does have like the red and blue suit on, and then he goes bad. So he has to change at some point if they're still following that storyline. But I just hope that Flash is watchable.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Flash. Addressing the red and blue suit, if in the Snyder cut he's still in the black and silver when Lois dies, when she gets Omega beamed, and that's when Darkseid is next to him and puts his hand on his shoulder, and you can see the black and silver suit. And then when he's corrupted, that's when he changes. Zach has touched on this on one of the commentaries or Vero conventions that he had, is that after he succumbs to the anti-life equation, he switches to the red and blue, and then he'll have a different suit when he gets out of it by Justice League 3, was kind of like his journey to the more traditional quote unquote Superman that people know by the end of Justice League 3. So if Black Adam is in that continuity, then this Superman is corrupted by Darkseid, which I don't see happening. And that's why I think all of that is going to be ignored, unfortunately. And there's been a lot of talk of, is Henry Cavill backstabbing Zach a little bit by doing that? And I don't know. We'll see what happens again, but I don't think that Superman is going to be. I really do think they're ignoring the Snyder cut and just trying to do their own thing moving forward. But I do want to ask you, since we're kind of on the same camp for the most part of wanting to see more out of Zach, if they make a new Superman trilogy or new Superman projects, they bring Ben back. That's the latest rumor, is that Ben is back for a trilogy of films, Batman, and that they're going to be moving forward with more Wonder Woman films as well. If all of these projects do get greenlit and they still don't bring Zach back, does that give you any confidence in these new projects?
I mean, it really depends on the talent attached. Like, if they're moving forward with these, there's no dismissing the contribution that Zach made, to those movies. They have all said that they like him, but they don't make the decisions on who gets hired. I believe that if Zach had more power and it wasn't the executives getting in the way, Ben Affleck's Batman movie would have happened. But with all these people willing to come back, I mean, Affleck and others were willing to come back for 4 days of reshoots for one scene in Dawn of Justice. So like, they like him, they want him, but like it's hard to speculate. The path of the DCEU has been wild from day one.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly don't know what to expect in the future. I would definitely hope that they at least bring him back as at bare minimum as like a creative or story consultant. Cause like if anything, he does not lack for ideas.
Absolutely. And Zach has already said that his story for the next couple of films, if he were to get a Justice League 2 and 3, has evolved since he's revealed the full plan, and that's already changed. So I'm assuming he's worked on it in hopes of maybe one day getting to pitch this to Warner Brothers Discovery. And the rumor, of course, being that he's already pitched it to Warner Brothers Discovery. But again, things are still going to stay very interesting over the next couple of years as we learn more, even months. But let's talk about Black Adam's debut, as it did have a disappointing $67 million domestically with an underwhelming $140 million worldwide. So both Maceo and I lost from our bets last week. Maceo said it would do about the same as the Pattinson film, which ended up at $130 million domestically. I said it would be a lower $90 million domestically, and Black Adam went even lower, 67. So
67 is about what, I mean, I'm not saying exactly 67, but I would have guessed somewhere between 60 and 80 million. And I just had that gut feeling of like, well, I feel like rock fans will like it, but like comic book fans might have a rough time with it. And I just, like I said, I just didn't see anything that made me want to go spend my money on it right now. And I still haven't heard anything that makes me want to go spend my money on it right now. So I'll wait for it to hit streaming. I wanted this movie to do well, but like my gut feeling was just saying like it's going to be a middling performance.
Mm-hmm. The rumored number right now after marketing, because they marketed the hell out of this movie. It's on drinks, it's on comics,
Mhm.
it's all over the place. Supposedly they need to hit 700 million to
No.
break even, and I don't think that's going to happen. You know, this is exactly what I expected. I didn't expect it to be that low, but it's super low. So right now they're spinning it. I don't know if you've noticed, the news stories are spinning it as it's doing better than expected, or it's The Rock's highest solo debut film. Like they're saying, they're making these facts that are like not really impressive, but they sound impressive.
When I saw that first headline, I'm like, wait a second, it's Friday night. How is it? Like, it's Friday afternoon. How is it already his best opening? I'm like, oh, for his preview screenings for Thursday night.
Right.
Like it did like 6.7 million. Like, well, that's not good. And I mean, whatever, movie does, like, it's preview night, can give you a good idea, like, what it's going to do for the weekend. And so, like, I would think, like I said, it did the under 7 million for preview night. That's 10% of what it did for the whole opening weekend. Like I said, I wanted it to do well. I wanted my expectations and my feeling to be wrong on it, but I'm just disappointed because I wanted it to do great, but I knew it wasn't going to.
We'll see what the week 2 drops look like, especially now that the secret, quote unquote secret, is out of Superman being in the post-credit scene. They're really trying to hype that up as well. Like, come see it because Superman's in there, even though you can watch the scene on Twitter. But Black Panther Wakanda Forever debuts in 2 weeks. No one's going to be watching Black Adam in 2 weeks. Nope. I recommended people like, hey, if you're going to see one movie, go watch a comic book movie, go watch Black Panther because that'll be a better movie than Black Adam, I think.
Maybe they'll release it to streaming like right after that.
Who knows? But it's not going to do well, and it's done after 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to Wakanda Forever. Like, I need to see how they handle, Chadwick Boseman's death.
A lot of curiosity about that, yeah, and I do think it's going to do extremely well. The Hollywood Reporter has published a piece about the current state of DC films at Warner Brothers with the exit of Walter Hamada. So right now they're saying that there's a power vacuum with a lot of different projects and characters at play. We mentioned earlier, Michael DeLuca and Pam Abdi are reportedly looking for writers for the Man of Steel 3, because BVS is the sequel. We keep telling people on Twitter, Zach has said it, Man of Steel 2 is BVS. So for this sequel, which is produced by Charles Roven, a great sign. He loves Zach. He was working with Zach back when all of this was going on. And he is back from David Zaslav brought Charles Roven back. So that's a great sign. But according to the Hollywood Reporter, director J.J. Abrams is still on track to produce Ta-Nehisi Coates' Black Superman movie, which would exist outside of the main DC movie continuity. That part did surprise me because Zaslav, one, has been canceling a lot of projects to try to cut into the debt that Warner Brothers Discovery is in, unfortunately. And he has been very clear about, we want something like the MCU where it's one story, one continuity. So that kind of contradicts a little bit his supposed plan on wanting one Superman, one Wonder Woman, one Batman. And especially after Abrams didn't do shit over the last couple of years on anything.
I thought they last said they were going to turn that project into like a prestige series for like HBO Max. But again, like everything's changed since then. But the Joker movie doesn't take place in that continuity. So why can't they have, a different Superman in a different continuity? So, I mean, they've already got a different Batman in a different continuity. So, I mean, multiverse away.
I guess so. It's just kind of surprising again that Joker makes sense that they would keep that because it made over $1 billion. Like, all right, well, that'll clearly make money. Let's go ahead and do the Joker 2. The Batman, even though it's not the best performing Batman film, some can argue that it was successful. And he has mentioned the Pattinson movie. So obviously he's going to let that. We're probably going to see a Pattinson 2. But yeah, this one is the one that I expected this to get cut. I expected Blue Beetle to go away. He did cut the Justice League Dark, I think, was another one by Abrams that he did cut. That one's not happening. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Michael B. Jordan is starring in Superman by J.J. Abrams, and it'll be interesting to see. We're probably still 6 years off on that one, but just kind of, again, a power vacuum happening as they still haven't found the new head of DC Films.
Yeah. I'll take the job. I mean, I'll bear that burden.
Will you hashtag bring back Zack Snyder?
That's my first hire. What are you talking about?
So someone on Discord today asked, like they're like, does Zach even want to come back? And someone already compiled a video on Twitter of every interview over the last year or two where he's like, yeah, I would come back. I would come back. I would come back. So it's just kind of funny. Like, no, he's available. He's ready. He's willing to pitch, but we don't know what's going on. We really don't know what's happening. And that's the uncertainty is killing me, man. I just wish Zaslav would give us, instead of like, oh, stay tuned, there's some stuff happening. It's like, just give me an outline, man. Give me some hope.
Okay, so if I'm the Kevin Feige of the DC universe, okay, obviously Zach's back. We're reshooting. I don't care how much money and let's say money isn't an object. We're reshooting all of Ezra Miller's scenes for the Flash movie, delaying that another year.
So you're recasting him?
Recasting him because, like, yeah, he, despite all his shenanigans, like, he still could be going away to jail for like the better part of the next 3 decades if things don't break in his way. I want him to get help, and I liked his Barry Allen, but I want to like be able to go see the Flash movie and not think about like the horrible shit that he's done, you know, in between filming that movie and it's being released. We'd fix Mira's accent in the Aquaman movie to the one that Zach was initially had in Justice League. We'd have we dial back the color saturation in Wonder Woman 1984.
Yeah.
Battinson would be retooled to be Victorian era Batman in an Elseworld series of movies.
Oh, cool. Gotham by Gaslight?
Yeah. And we call like anything that didn't take place in the continuity, we would just brand as Elseworlds.
There you go. Elseworlds or DC Black Label. I don't know why they haven't taken off with that.
We would do HBO Max series, much like, you know, like Disney's or Marvel's doing with Disney Plus. Only we're going to let people tell a story in any kind of style, any kind of continuity that they want in those. So we get back like the artistic experimentation that you find in the comic books. And if things need to tie together, well, then they'll make a scene that ties them together. They don't have to fit together stylistically, but we let HBO Max be like an experimental ground for people want to just like, you know, have a go. Like, you've got limited budget, but here, this is, you know, do what you want to do. And like, if your project is 15 minutes or it's a 6-part miniseries, like, you need to bring back that wild experimentation that was very prominent in the days of DC, where Paul Levitz was running the show, Jeanette Kahn, even like Dan DiDio was allowing people to be some experimentation. You just turn what was pre-New 52 DC, you know, with the main universe, the Superman titles, the Batman titles, Vertigo, you just transplant that into like, that's what you do with your HBO Max series. And then if you find something that's like a good or has some traction, you push that into a movie.
Leaps and bounds better than what was happening with Emmerich and crew.
Although they don't know what they were doing. I mean, I remember, you know, hearing a story or reading a story years ago about, you know, like Golden Apple Comics in LA, one of the, you know, more famous comic book stores. These guys walking in all wearing like crisp, new, like fresh off the hanger, like Batman and Superman shirts, whatever, but they're all wearing like sport jackets, and they're very clearly like Warner Brothers executives that are clearly clueless on like trying to look like they're cool, and like clearly clueless about the characters and the properties, and trying to like ask leading questions that just get them the answers they want, because they weren't fans of they knew they owned it, they knew they could develop it, but they were just asking questions to try to get the answers that they wanted and go back to their higher ups with, well, see, like, these fans said this,
right?
You know, like the base level of market research.
And that's one thing that has me worried as he left, like, to poison the well with Zaslav and all them. And it's just one of those things that you just hope that he was like, okay, thanks. We'll do our own. We've got our own guys working on it.
Oh, we got Ray Fisher back too. I can't forget about that.
Oh yes, of course. That's another thing where, like, when Ray Fisher comes back, like, we're good, but he's been tweeting still. Like a few days ago, he's like, on the day Hamada left, Hamada has yet to apologize for what happened on the set of Justice League. Put that out there, and accountability is greater than entertainment. So he's still flying that flag. He's made it clear that just because he's gone, it doesn't mean we're good.
Oh yeah, Hamada won't apologize. Like if he was going to, he would have by now.
And they were hoping that now that since he's gone, that he would, but it hasn't happened, and I don't think it will. I think there was a lot of ego at work in that old regime, and that's why they spent money like crazy. Like one of the things I keep running into, I keep butting heads with people that I talk to, coworkers, whomever, of the insanity of, oh, Zaslav is cutting this, and why is he cutting that cartoon, the whole Cartoon Network thing? And it's like, okay, he's cutting a lot of projects, he's cleaning up, he's cutting down the debt, but we got to remember that none of this is his doing. This is all Emmerich and crew. They were the ones spending money like crazy on these projects. So don't blame the guy that's cleaning up after them. Like, get mad at them because they're the ones who cost all these people these jobs. They're the ones that kept the circus running and spending money where they shouldn't have. This is all their fault, man. It's not
reportedly like running WB so far into the ground that they only have enough money to release 2 more movies this year.
Yes, Black Adam was one of them, and I forget the other, but that's it.
Like, that's insane.
Billions and billions in debt. And now the latest thing I've heard, and maybe by the time this episode releases, we'll learn of the latest cuts, but this week, David is looking at Q3 2022 projects, and he needs to cut 2.5 billion is the next number to stay on track. So there's more coming, everyone. But it's like a Band-Aid. Again, I'm glad it's like a Band-Aid where we're getting all of these back to back to back to back. But that does wrap up our block of news for this week. Let's jump into the Brocat block, which is what Matt and I have been up to since you last heard us. So before we go into my week and a Patreon comment, Matt, please catch us up with what you've been up to since you were last on.
Well, getting more broke. I mean, and this legitimately this time, this last Prime Day, my wife and I went on a bit of a shopping spree that we're going to, well, things are at the right time of the year where, okay, we can, make a few more purchases now, and not long after the new year, we've got different bonuses and tax returns and all that stuff that'll be hitting that will basically pay for everything that we bought now. But we've got our actual wedding ceremony, our big party coming up at the end of January. So we basically just splurged on getting all of our groomsmen and bridesmaid gifts and getting our rehearsal dinner scheduled and deposit down on that. And I went all in on 3D printer stuff. So,
ooh,
yeah, I'm starting to play around with that.
What are you going into making? Are you going to make stuff to sell online or just stuff that you want to use personally?
Eventually, both. But the stuff online won't happen until later. If there's one thing that's been apparent just from, just general research and scrolling through TikTok after TikTok and YouTube video is that the market may seem like it is, but it's not saturated with 3D printer people yet. Just because there is a limit on how quickly a lot of these things can be produced. The machines, while are produce fantastic things, they can take some prints can take days to print.
Wow.
And that's if nothing goes wrong with some of these things. But I got bitten by the 3D printer bug hard. And the first project we're working on, after I kind of test some things, test and play around with it, get certain settings dialed in, we're making our centerpieces. And that's what the first major project with this 3D printer is going to be for, is we want to print up our centerpieces based around different theme parks.
Oh, nice.
So it's finding 3D models for that. And there's an extra cost, but we're very excited. Maybe in a year or so, but I want to start, get on the TikToks with all the cool kids.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Not every blueprint, from what I understand, can be successfully printed in real life. I've heard that the weight of the project can crumble, right? It can kind of break as it's printing or something like that.
Yeah, well, the nozzle can get jammed up, and then all of a sudden, and because you're walking away from it, you're not sitting there watching it.
Yeah,
you could come back to a print that's half done. I saw one the other day that was someone was printing like a 10-inch Goku, and it printed up to just above the waist, and then all of a sudden there had to have been a jam or a slip somewhere, and it's just random extruded PLA filament that's just became like a tumbleweed, after that. So that can happen. Sometimes they can crack when you're coming off, when you're taking them off the build plate. There's like a lot that can go wrong. They might not be thick enough. They might not have enough, infill, which is kind of like the pattern. So when it in there, that it kind of prints on, it's not like a solid piece of plastic, or you just have like your settings dialed in for the right filament that you're using, because there's so many different kinds of filament. There's PLA plastic. There's a more flexible kind, so you can make like phone cases and rub and like squishable objects. There's carbon fiber. There's wood-based ones. So
wow.
It's like there's a lot of different varieties. That's what I like about that. And I'm in like some costuming groups, and just seeing like people making like film level quality, like Iron Man and Batman suits. We're making accessories or full on suits with these things. Depending on the size of your printer, or how many printers you have, like it can take you a very long time, or it can be very quick, depending if you have a lot of printers. I saw this one guy I follow. He printed a life-size Master Chief statue.
Oh, that's cool.
That was based off of 3D file of like the 8-inch figure, and all he did was like blow it up to flight size. And the thing, and this guy was 6'2", 6'3", and this thing towered over him when he was done with it. But it came out amazing. But that guy has 80 printers in his warehouse I think he's in like Indiana, and the heat from 80 printers in his workshop, he doesn't have to turn any heat on in the actual building. Like he walked in, it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, and it was 15 degrees out. And what I remember it was cold though, and you could see his breath. And he walks in, and it's 77 degrees without the heat on. So a lot of these people who are you're seeing out there, they're like making a lot of money, or there's a lot of visibility. They've got dozens of these printers already, or they keep it's like an addiction. They buy one, they get another, and like I already have the bug to get another one, but I am very limited by the amount of space that I have. I can only fit one, or actually I can fit two, but one spot's taken by an old 3D printer that a friend of mine basically sold me for dirt cheap that I haven't even fired up yet. I don't know that it'll work, so I had to get something that I knew was going to work right away to do this project.
Yeah, and as they continue to make these different 3D printers, newer ones, they're going to get faster, they're going to get smaller, more accurate. You'll probably be able to do more complex blueprints in the future. The technology is just going to ramp up in the next decade.
I'm very excited. I mean, like the barrier to entry to buying them has dropped significantly just in the last couple of years. Like pre-pandemic, your entry level 3D printer was like $400, like $400. Now you can get a decent entry level 3D printer for like 150, 160. Wait for Prime Day. Anytime you hear Prime Day being mentioned coming up, like that's what I did. And like I bought a brand new 3D printer, from Elegoo, and a ton of filament. Honestly, like if I hadn't gotten it on Prime Day, it would have been like $200-300 more than what I actually spent. Everything all together.
My first exposure to 3D printing, of course, was at the comic shop, because we have miniatures players like Warhammer and Dungeons and Dragons, and naturally they were some of the first people that I knew that invested in 3D printers. And this was like 6 years ago, back when they were more expensive. Like you were saying, entry level was not easy. And they, of course, they had them. They were making little minis, and they wanted to learn how to make custom characters for Dungeons and Dragons for people, and make the minis instead of having to buy them, that sort of thing. When I ran Pokemon, one guy had a 3D printer, and he knew Gengar was my favorite, so he gave me a little 3D printed Gengar figurine or whatever. I still have it. And I was just like, holy shit, like this is a 3D printed thing. It was my first thing I've seen and held. And you can see like I don't know if it's still like this, but you can see the lines on the texturing of where it printed. I don't know if they've gotten smoother with that or not, but I was just like, that's really interesting. You could really make anyone.
Again, yeah, it depends on your settings. There are degrees in quality, but it depends on like the size of your nozzle too. And like you can do like the slower you make your print, like the smoother it'll be. But even like with the film and the FDM printers, you'll see some lines. There's not one that's going to be perfectly smooth. It really depends on the type of material you're doing and the lighting that you're hitting it with. But some of these filaments that some of these filament producers are making is meant to take advantage of that. Like we have like the color shifting ones or like the metallics and stuff like that. It really creates like a really like beautiful texture with the way the light hits some of these things. The resin printers though, there's like no line tones. I want to get into that, but that's something where you definitely need to have some ventilation available. You know, I don't have any room for it, and because you need the resin smells, and you have to like wash it nice with propyl alcohol, and you like a whole like wash and cure station. So like, I would love to get into that because the prints are vastly superior, but it costs a little bit more to make your prints. But maybe when I have a house and like a bigger workspace, then we'll get into that. But I almost bought one too because the price was right on Prime Day. There's absolutely no place I haven't set it up though right now. It just sit in a box, and if Prime Day has taught me anything, is they will go on sale again.
Yep. Well, that's awesome. You'll have to send me some pictures of your finished projects as you get going into January.
Absolutely.
I do want to highlight a comment here from Patreon backer Adrian C., who of last week's episode said, quote, "It's crazy to hear how much or how little video game voice actors get paid. Reminds me of Netflix stars. I hear some don't get paid at all or just not enough to make ends meet. Regarding Bland Adam, I still have no interest in seeing it. His tweet about his film being phase 1 really confirmed that the Snyderverse is still not restored. Just hashtag bring back Zack Snyder already and hashtag restore the Snyderverse. Zack is already his own brand and does not need to piggyback off The Rock." End quote. I agree with all of that. And I'm glad he brought up the phase 1 thing, because that's one thing that I was like, come on, man, you're not the MCU. What are you doing, The Rock? But like, I was talking to Bobby about it, another host on here, and he was like, he's using the lingo. That's the lingo that they all understand, that the general audience understands. And I guess that's what they were going for. But I agree with him. Like, I don't like that phase 1 shit or any of that.
Yeah, it is very Marvel-esque, and I mean, The Rock is not dumb. He is trying to use that language to kind of maybe sow a little bit of confusion in Marvel fans, because like not all the people going to see the Marvel movies like understand the difference in universes and characters. So I guarantee you someone got fooled and was wondering like when Iron Man or Captain America would show up.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Thank you, Adrian, again for the comment. I really appreciate it. Keep them coming. I love them. all good stuff so far. This week, I did get to revisit the Silent Hill film, the one that came out, I want to say 2005 or 6.
Is that with Rhoda Mitchell?
I think yes, I believe that's her name. She was in the second one too, but the second one was 3D and it had a different director and everything. Mm-hmm. But I had seen the first one in theaters and I remember enjoying it. And I was watching Cinematech actually, and they had one of the Silent Hill games on there. They had the Pyramid Head, they had the nurses, and I'm like, oh, that reminds me of that one movie. So I went into like the rabbit hole of whatever happened to that. Did they make more sequels? And then I was like, you know what? Let me just pick it up on Vudu. And I picked it up on Vudu, rewatched it. It still holds up. I don't know have you ever seen Silent Hill?
No, I have not. I've seen about as much of the movie as I have of the games. Like cut scenes.
Yeah, it's from what I understand, it captures the atmosphere of the games and it captures a lot of the monsters accurately, but the reasons are different. So, for example, Pyramid Head, are you familiar with that design with the big sword and the thing? Mm-hmm. So that is a manifestation of one of the villains in the game, of his guilt and wanting to be punished for the bad things he's done. So he manifests the Pyramid Head, who is basically someone that is out to punish you and kill you. In the movie, it's just a cool creature that shows up and it looks great on the screen. And I know some Silent Hill fans had problems with that because they said that every monster had a reason for being. Mm-hmm. And in the movie, they just used iconic monsters, which I had no problem with. It's like, okay, you're in Silent Hill. This is they say it in the movie, the nightmares of this little girl and her imagination. So I think it works, but I do recommend Silent Hill if you haven't seen it since it came out. I would say it's probably up there with one of the best video game adaptations, probably top 10. I don't know if I'd put it in my top 5.
Wait, there's 10 good video game movies.
There's got to be. I mean,
I mean, I know there's 10 movies. I'm just saying that it's a short list of like what would be a good video game movie.
yeah, I mean, I'd have to give. Maybe I'll tweet out a top 10, but I'm sure I've got 10 video game movies that I enjoyed, and Silent Hill would be one of them. But it is on Vudu. It's not streaming, I don't think, on anything, because that's where I had to look first. But if you're getting into the Halloween spirit, and they just announced that the director of this film is going to come back for a part 3, which is great because there's a whole history back there. But COVID did some good things for artists. There was a lot of awful that came out of it, but there was some good too. And in this case, the director was able to take that time during COVID and write a treatment for part 3, which is now going to be a reboot to the Silent Hill series. But he's a part of it, and I'm happy about that because his directing was awesome in the film. He really cared about capturing the atmosphere of the games. It's very different. It's not traditional horror. It's more like almost like an art house film a little bit. And
that's good.
Patrick Tatopoulos, are you familiar with that name?
Yeah, he's a creature designer. Designed the Roland Emmerich Godzilla, and didn't do like the creatures in Pitch Black.
I think so, yeah.
And he's done a lot of like very innovative like creature design and sci-fi design.
Yeah, he also did Doomsday and BVS, and I believe he worked on the Snyder Cut as well. And he worked on Silent Hill. And when I was watching the behind the scenes, I was like, "Oh shit, cool!" And he's there. He's doing the costumes and everything with all the other costume designers. And I'm like, "Oh, of course he would be involved." That's why the monsters look amazing. So good stuff. And outside of that, again, I watched the Halloween Ends movie. I was happy I got to go to that. And just kind of getting into the Halloween spirit. I know it's a little late in the month for that. I know some people celebrate as soon as we get into the fall season. But I'm like, all right, now it's starting to feel like Halloween. I'm about to take Leo out trick-or-treating at some point, and he's going to have fun. I do feel a little bad. Maybe this week I'll do it. But he was like, can we decorate the house in Halloween? And that's not something we really do. But I think last year for the first time we decorated for Christmas. So I think this year I'm going to try to make it the first time we decorate for Halloween. So maybe I'll take him to a pumpkin patch or Party City and have him pick out some pumpkins that we can put out every year. I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of what I've been up to.
The family gets bigger.
Yeah. And with another one on the way, it's Kelly's. She just talked about it a couple weeks ago, but she's still going through the all-day sickness. It's not morning sickness. It's all-day sickness. And finding the foods that will stay down and the stuff that the baby likes and the baby doesn't like. And I'm like, I can't even begin to comprehend any of what she's going through. So I'm just like, whatever you need.
My family just got bigger too. My cousin just had her baby on the 18th.
Oh, nice. Congratulations.
Thanks. She's a little cutie pie.
Boy, she? Awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah, there's a lot of people speculating that ours is going to be a little girl. I don't know why, but we'll see. But we will find out in 3 weeks, I want to say. That's her next doctor appointment, and by then, they're supposed to be able to tell. But good stuff.
That's awesome, man.
Mastradamus, before we finish off today's episode, there's so much uncertainty again. Do you have any predictions over what's going to happen between now and about a month and a half when you'll be next back on again?
See, these things just come to me. You don't go looking for them. They find you. There's gonna be with only one, maybe two more projects that Warner Brothers itself is going to be able to release the rest of this year. I feel like they're gonna make an announcement. I know that Zaslav had said months ago that there was going to be an announcement, but it's past that time that he said there was going to be one. But I feel like there's going to be some breadcrumbs, some things tossed our way now that Henry Cavill has announced that he is going to be coming back as Superman. I feel like there's still some heads to roll, but I think in time for Christmas we'll have a little peace on Earth and maybe a little Zack Snyder to all men.
Man, that'd be a hell of a gift, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
All right, we'll pin that one on there. Make sure to tune back in again, Brocat Core, when that happens in about a month and a half. But I want to thank you, Matt, so much for being the co-host this week, for helping make this episode possible. Please let the Brocat Core know where they can.
Right now, it's still on Facebook at Facebook.com/Madner, or very soon coming to a TikTok near you. I just got to make some content first before I start putting them out there and let everyone down with weeks of delays.
Yes, the TikTok. Make sure to get all the lingo down.
Yeah, you are a slave to the content machine.
That's right. I still haven't made a TikTok, but I don't even do Instagram Reels, so I'd have to get into that first.
TikTok, for whatever reason, is just like stuck with me because I've actually like learned stuff off of there. Like, of all the social medias that are out there, like this one is made from the most ADD of people. And this one seems to be like sticking with me. Like, I just doom scroll Facebook these days. I'm barely on Instagram, but TikTok, man, I can like scroll and keep watching videos, cooking, animal videos, artistic, creative stuff. Like, I could just I've got my algorithm dialed in there where I just get, inspiration across my feed for hours.
I think I saw a statistic somewhere or read that most younger people get their news from TikTok now. And
am I a younger person? Am I a young people?
You're with the trend, man.
What's up, my hip young friends?
What's bussin'?
Yeah.
What's lit today? Yeah, keep using TikTok.
Sucks?
That might be the fountain of youth right there. You'll wake up maybe 1 hour younger tomorrow. Keep going.
Who knows?
But there you go. That's where you can find Matt, and there will be a link in the description of today's episode. There's also a link this week to patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke. For just $1 a month, you too can enjoy the episodes early every single week. And sometimes we record earlier in the week like we did this week, and the episode goes out a day or two even sooner than what the patrons normally get, which is usually Thursday, Friday. I think last week I released it on Wednesday on Patreon, and that's ahead of Sunday's release. So up to 3-4 days earlier than release, you can get it at patreon.com/thereasonsimBroke, just like Adrian is. And thank you again, Adrian, and to the rest of our Patreon support. I've been Daniel this week, joined by Matt and Brocat Core. Thank you so much. All will be well. Matt, I've got to ask, what is your favorite horror film? One that you either revisit or one that you've been scared by the most? It might be a two-part question because if they're different movies, I'm curious and I want to know your answers.
They are two different answers. My favorite still goes, I got to go back to the classic Universal monsters, particularly like the Bela Lugosi Dracula movie.
I gotta see that. I gotta see that.
Especially like the Spanish version.
Why the Spanish version?
And I don't mean like it's like Spanish language. There was like a cut that was released in like Spain. It's just like a longer cut.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So like, that's just classic, iconic. The Universal monsters are all great because, it's the big problem that you have with like 80s horror icons, 70s horror icons is that like the classic Universal monsters are like, they're tragic characters. There's always like something they're normal men or normal innocent people that were, something tragic happened to them to turn them into the monster that they are. Whereas like a lot of the more modern iconic characters are just kind of, like slashers. There's nothing really sympathetic about them, with very rare exception. Like Jason Voorhees might be the one that I can think of that might be sympathetic. Like their backstory is sympathetic. So as far as like the ones that like scare me, it's very hard to find something that like scares me. Like just like I kind of like appreciate like the makeup work and some of the silly gore, but a lot of it's tied into like jump scares for me. I feel like the most horrific things are the things that they don't show you everything. They let your brain kind of like connect the dots there and fill in the gaps. But I remember being terrified when I was a kid of the original Nightmare on Elm Street, because any of those other characters, like I knew like they couldn't get me. They're not real, but Freddy got you in your dreams. So,
right.
But if there was something that could, and like I had nightmares for days, and like this was me as a kid who like was already watching like Friday the 13th and Texas Chainsaw Massacre and a bunch of other stuff, but like original Nightmare on Elm Street, actually the first two got me. By the third one, I was, they didn't get me anymore, but those first two I kind of saw back to back, peeking through a crack in the door, like, to the family room while my parents were watching them. They knew I'd seen them when I was like sleeping on the floor next to their bed for the better part of a week after that.
Of course. Something about us as kids, if you're not allowed to watch something, you really want to watch it.
Right.
Like I was reading a comic, I think it was Department of Truth or something that had some horror images on it. And I was like, no, he's like, what's that? Like any comic he now recognizes because he's around comics all day, especially in this household. And I'm like, oh, it's a comic. And he's like, what's it about? I'm like, it's not for kids. It's a little scary. And then he was like, oh, can I see? And I'm like, no, you can't see. And then I kept reading, and then I look over at him, and he's like peeking with his eyes sideways. And I'm like, hey, and he looked away, and he's like, keep reading, Dad. I won't look. But he's again looking sideways, and I'm like, that's the guiltiest fucking face, man. I've with mine, I've got to go with The Exorcist is probably my favorite. I don't know if it scares me as much because I saw Hereditary. Have you seen Hereditary yet?
Not yet. I did see that director's follow-up Midsummer, and I fucking hated it.
Well, because it was scary, or it just was terrible?
No, I hated it.
Okay.
I just name anything like that movie triggers me when like because a friend of mine like got us to watch it. Like I had interest in seeing it, but like a friend like really pushed it and said, "Oh, it was great," and I'm watching the entire fucking movie, and I'm like, when is this supposed to be great? Like, it was the most pretentious horror movie I ever saw, and she still has not watched the terrible movie that I recommended to her that she's got to watch for pushing that filth on me.
What'd you tell her she'd have to watch?
I think it was, I can't remember the name of it. I think it was called
The Room.
My Left Hand or something like that, or My Lost Hand. I don't know. It's this French animated movie that basically is this hand. It's this disembodied hand that's trying to find its way back to the body it was detached from, and as it's trying to make its way across Paris, it's just seeing flashbacks of like what led up to like this happening. Like the animation is pretty cool. It's very reminiscent of Aeon Flux from MTV days, but it's just like someone read this script and said, you know what, I'm going to give you money. I'm going to fund this. I'm going to fund this existential drama about a disembodied hand finding its way back to its owner. And there's no mystical property about it. It's very kind of Toy Story-esque in that, no one actually sees this hand moving when it's actually moving. But when no one's looking, it's kind of like, Cousin It, only, with ennui.
Well, yeah, if a lot of what to watch and what not to watch on this episode. So happy Halloween, everyone.